Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast for financial professionals, bringing you life insurance insights from advanced sales experts and life insurance specialists. Grow a stronger practice today.
Welcome to Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast. I'm your host, Bill Bell, Vice President of Advanced Sales with Penn Mutual, and I am so pleased that you chose to join us here today. Now, I have a co-host today, Jenna Washatka. Welcome back to Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast.
Thank you, Bill. Hey, everyone.
All right, so Jenna, we have a couple of reasons why this episode is special. First of all,
okay,
when this episode is actually released, it's going to be very close to Halloween. So I have a question for you right off the bat.
That's right.
What is your favorite Halloween costume that you've ever worn?
That I have ever worn? Well, this is an easy one to answer, and that would very clearly be the year that I was Alf. I mean, there's really been no costume in my mind that quite compares to getting to dress up as the character Alf from the late 80s television show.
Yeah, that's a show that I loved when I was a kid, and then I watched some of it when I became an adult, and I was like, what was I thinking?
Apparently the story is that costume was not forced on me, but I insisted that I choose Alf. So there was a version of me that loved that show at a point in time in history. But Bill, now you've got me wondering, what was your favorite Halloween costume?
So my favorite actually didn't happen when I was a kid. This would have been around circa 2001 or so.
Okay.
My wife and I were going to take our then, I think, 6-year-old son trick-or-treating, and we were shopping for costumes. We found costumes for the Spartan cheerleaders from Saturday Night Live, which were famously played by Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry. And for those of you unfamiliar with the skit, let's just say that they were overly enthusiastic cheerleaders. And so basically every single house that we went trick-or-treating to, my wife and I would do a cheer behind our son Leo in regards to what kind of candy he got or their decorations or something along those lines. It was the only time in the history of trick-or-treating that the kid wanted to go home before the parents.
I was going to say 6. Like, was he at the age where he was embarrassed by you or not quite? It's sort of right on the line.
I think it was, at first he thought it was funny, and then it just got sad after a while. But we were not gonna give up on the bit.
Gotcha. I love it.
So the second special reason why this podcast is so incredible is that it's our year-end planning episode. And we are going to be joined by our amazing advanced sales team members to talk about different subject matters. Can you give the listeners a little insight in regards to what it is that we're going to be chatting about here today with our team members?
Sure, Bill. So I think really when we get to this time of year, we start to get certain calls and you see certain trends and, okay, what are the year-end planning strategies? And a lot of them play really well into not just year-end, but as we're heading towards the sunset of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act at the end of 2025. So we really broke it down into 4 sections. You'll see a section on estate planning with Amy Bryant. You'll hear a section on business planning with George Bradley. You'll hear a section on charitable planning with Lindsay Cigler. And to wrap it all up, we will have a section on retirement planning with the fabulous Jay Perlman.
Fabulous Jay Perlman. I don't know if that's a strong enough adjective to describe Jay Perlman.
It was the first one that came to mind.
All right, it's very good though, very descriptive. So we have a bonus reason why this is such a special episode. So for our longtime listeners of Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast, I've been teasing that the episodes would be available on YouTube concurrently at some point with the release of the podcast on the podcasting apps. And the hope is that this episode is actually launched at the same time as the podcast on the actual podcasting apps. So if somebody's listening and they say that Jay Perlman, he sounds Clooney-esque, they could go onto YouTube and actually see that he's actually handsomer than George Clooney. Are you excited about that?
Yes. I think it's terrific. It'll be great to see it launched at the same time as the YouTube content.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So for those of you that are not subscribers yet to the Penn Mutual YouTube channel, please drop by YouTube, subscribe. That way you don't miss future episodes of the show going forward. We also have some other great content there. So again, YouTube, Penn Mutual channel, subscribe today. So Jenna, why don't we get to our conversations that we had with our advanced sales team members? And I think that we started with who you called the Jedi Master of Estate Planning, Amy Bryant. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
All right. Well, let's get to the conversation we had with Amy, and then we'll roll through our other advanced sales team members, and then we'll be back on to wrap it up at the end of the episode.
Awesome. Let's do it, Bill. Eye of the Tiger.
Bah, 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 bah.
Bum, bum, bum.
All right. So, Jenna, our first team member that's going to be joining us here today to talk about estate planning is the person that you called a Jedi Master of Estate Planning.
That's right.
Amy Bryant. So, Amy, 2 questions for you. Who are you? And have you gotten a cease and desist from Disney yet in regards to being a Jedi Master for estate planning?
No, but I should get one. I'm more of an Ewok, really. That's sort of my vibe. But I appreciate that. So my name's Amy Bryant. I'm one of the directors for advanced sales here at Penn Mutual. And I have been doing this for a long time, almost 3 decades, and love it. Advanced markets planning, this is kind of my thing. And I've been doing this as support for the high-end financial professional.
A lot of our listeners are aware of this, but we can assume that they are. We've got kind of a big deal coming up here in roughly 14 months or so. We have this thing called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, which has some elements that are set to expire at the end of next year. For those that have been living under a rock, can you explain what that means from a transfer tax perspective?
Yes, and that's the piece that gets the most in terms of headlines. That's the lifetime exemption, which is that amount which you can hold in your estate before the IRS will start to tax your assets. And that lifetime exemption today is $13.61 million because of TCJA. But because of the impact of that to our overall national budget and debt, we have to see it sunset. And that's going to sunset in 2026, which means it's going to drop back. Today it's 13.61. Next year it'll be approximately 14 million. In 2026, it's going to drop drastically to about, well, it depends on who you're listening to, but about 7 million. So we're going to see a huge drop, which means the demographics of transferring wealth is going to change and hit sort of that middle market.
So I think the numbers that I've seen from the people that follow this stuff from an inflation perspective and projecting forwards are saying 13.99 next year. Of course, they don't round anything into round numbers at the IRS, but 13.99 and then maybe 7.15 in 2026, unless there's a change. Is that correct?
Well, if you're going to split hairs on numbers, then yeah, that sounds pretty good.
That's what we do, isn't it?
It's what you do.
All right. Fair. Very fair.
Well, that was an awesome intro from the Forest Moon of Endor, Amy. Question for you. So in the past, we heard a lot about, seems like there was a lot more talk about the importance of using crummy letters and using crummy gifts. Why do you think we've gotten away from those traditional crummy gifts? And do you think we will see a resurgence of those if the sunset happens as planned?
Yeah, and that's a really good planning point for our financial professionals who are in this market. We really don't see a lot of irrevocable trusts that are being used with crummy powers. And that, I think, is because this estate tax issue is for the high-end, ultra-high net worth market. So they're using lifetime exemption. They're moving that 13.99, if you will, into these trusts next year. They don't really need to use crummy notices. In the middle market, I don't know. I would be considered middle market, and I couldn't move $1 million into an irrevocable trust. It's just not something that I can do or a lot of my clients can do. So what we need to do is look at the annual exclusion amount, which is $18,000 this year, and we need to trickle it in every year as opposed to pushing large amounts of value or wealth into these trusts. So we need to get to know how to use crummy withdrawal notices, the trust rules regarding ILETs. All of that's going to start to apply.
So, Amy, another element of estate planning that gets talked a lot about these days, and as we're getting to the end of the year here, and this is our year-end planning podcast, the thing that I hear most frequently, other than just, hey, we have this exemption that is expiring at the end of next year, is how do we maximize planning for skip generations, grandkids, great grandkids, and so forth, aka the GST exemption, generation skipping transfer tax exemption. What are you hearing in regards to GST planning these days? And one of the hidden things that I think a lot of people don't realize is that GST exemption is not portable. Can you explain what that means for the people that are listening here today?
Yeah, just like crummies, just like ILETs, we're starting to see an uptick in questions about GST. And one of the reasons is, as you've just pointed out, it's not portable. So what that means is that if a spouse dies, their lifetime exemption, that 13.61, is quote unquote portable in that the surviving spouse can pick it up and use it at second death. You can't use that with your GST exemption. So you have to use it at first death or during your lifetime, and it doesn't transfer over to your spouse. So GST is kind of a big deal because what that means is the IRS takes a special interest in the transfer from grandma and grandpa to the grandkids. And if they see these transfers, they want to know where their tax is at because you just skipped a generation. So we apply GST exemption to that transfer. So when you're looking at year end, as a planner, you need to look at, okay, are my clients, grandparents, gifting directly to the grandkids, or are they gifting into a vehicle for the grandkids, like a trust or maybe a 529 plan? If that's part of their year-end planning, then they need to get in there and pick up that GST exemption to make sure nobody's got extra surprise tax there.
So I have a follow-up question for you. I've worked on a bunch of cases over my career where the financial professional calls me up and says, hey, I'm working with this client. They're in their 40s. They're high net worth. They want to take advantage of the exemption. They have kids, but they're far away from having grandkids. Is it required that a person has grandkids to allocate the GST exemption if they're making a gift to a trust either this year or next year to be able to take advantage of the increased transfer tax exemption?
No, they do not. We can have, phantom grandbabies, and we still need to apply the exemption to them because they may take it at some time. So, yeah.
So bottom line is, if you have a client and they're able to take advantage of this increased transfer tax exemption, either this year or next year, and they can allocate GST to the gift, even if they don't have grandkids yet, why wouldn't you do it? It is the way that I look at it.
Exactly. And in fact, I've seen trusts that are moving into that third generation now, and we're having to plan for GST because they didn't plan on the front end for that. And we've got, grandpa who's not doing great, got some health issues. And we're like, okay, how are we going to deal with this? Because when he passes away, we're going to have a tax on that trust because they didn't do any planning on front end. So yeah, that's super important.
So many awesome planning ideas, Amy. I want to ask, we're seeing a lot of race to the sunset planning or trying to beat the sunset. And I wanted to ask, kind of in our hurry, what is the importance of building flexibility into these plans, whether it be into the trust or into the LLC design, or really even just to the life insurance products themselves that are being used?
Yeah. And I think that that's a really big planning issue right now, because we really are moving these plans very quickly if we're going to pick up the higher exemption. I mean, we're getting plans done in a very short period of time. So the clients might feel a little rushed. And if they're feeling a little rushed and we're dealing with entities like LLCs and irrevocable trusts, the idea of flexibility may help them with the planning process. Psychologically, it'll help them get to that peace of mind that, yeah, we've got some flexibility built into these plans. But second, it's also longevity of the plan. We know what we've got right now. We know we've got sunset in 2026. We don't know what Congress will do with all of this, 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now. So if we have that flexibility built in, like things like trust protectors, you got to love your trust protectors, your special powers of appointment, all of these things are going to help us long-term in the event that we need to shift. And we can do a lot of shifting as long as we do planning today for tomorrow's shift.
Love it.
Ooh, that sounds like a good marketing idea, doesn't it?
Somebody write it down quick.
Okay, I got to write that down.
Always be marketing. That's what I say. Always. All right. I got one last business question for you, and then I got a fun question for you. So we've been talking about the sunset, and it's critically important. But about 2 weeks after this podcast is released, a little less than 2 weeks, we're going to be having an election. Let's say the Democrats win the presidency, the Senate, and the House. Is there a guarantee we're going to get to the end of 2025 and actually be able to utilize this sunset? Or is there a possibility that they change the rules before the end of 2025 so that we no longer have this exemption to be able to play with?
Okay, so I don't want to say anything too definitively, right? Because Congress has made me a liar before. But when you look at the timeline and the process of getting this thing through negotiation, through, the drafting process, through the whole kit and caboodle from beginning to end, I don't know if it's physically possible. So I would say no. But again, Congress has made me a liar before. So I'd say no with a caveat.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And if they did put something in place, it probably goes into place in 2026. But it's not a guarantee. And I think that people that are listening should be talking to their clients about, hey, let's not wait until the last minute here, because they could change the rules at any time. And so being able to take advantage of this exemption is critically important. All right, a fun question for you. So for our listeners, a little look behind the curtain of how we do things in the advanced sales area. Our advanced sales team every Friday, assuming that we're not all traveling, has a team meeting, and we talk about what we're going to do on the weekends. And Amy always seems to have the best weekend plans. She's doing this, she's doing that. It's like, I'm really jealous. If you were to schedule out your kind of perfect weekend activity, Amy, what would it be?
Well, there's going to be bourbon and barbecue involved. And because it's the season, it's going to be Packers on top of that. So, yeah. Football and food.
How did I know you were going to say that?
I say it almost every week.
And that's why you have the best weekend plans.
Yeah.
All right, Amy. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to move on to our next tranche of information here, but a lot of great planning ideas from a wealth transfer perspective. So thanks again for joining us here today. Next up, George Bradley to talk about business planning. George, welcome to this episode of Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I'm George Bradley. I'm one of the directors of the Advanced Sales team. I've been with Penn Mutual for over 20 years and in this business since I was 16 years old. I'm happy to be here today and help out any way I can.
All right. So, George, we talk about this at the end of every single year. I should say every year since 409A came into place back in 2004. Why is it so important for companies that have non-qualified deferred compensation plans that they have their executives make timely deferral elections for compensation that they want to defer in the following tax year?
Sure. The best way to say this is that your deferrals are usually limited by the amount of remaining income that you have. In other words, your remaining income and any year-end bonus until the end of the year may be limited by any allowable percentage of deferral available in your particular plan.
And in addition to that, I mean, I think it's just important for people to understand that the way that 409A works is that you have to, if you're going to defer income in, say, 2025, you have to make the elective deferral before the end of the previous tax year. And for bonuses that are paid next year, it probably is going to be too late to elect to defer them, because the way that the rules work for that is that you have to make a deferral election at least 6 months prior to the end of which a bonus is earned. So for the 2024 bonuses that are paid in 2025, it's going to be too late. But for next year, it's something that people should absolutely check the box in regards to planning.
Wonderful. George, let me pick your brain for a bit in the way I normally do when I have a complicated question, and always appreciate when you answer my call. Let's talk for a moment about executives who maybe they've already maxed out their 401k for this year, and they're either consistently getting refunds or they're just looking to put more away on a pre-tax basis. Is this time of year, year end, is this a good time to be talking with business owners about what their executive comp offerings look like?
Certainly. Many of our FPs and their clients should be focused on year-end tax planning. Some highly compensated individuals have maxed out their qualified plan contributions, but they're still looking for other ways to reduce their taxable income. A non-qualified deferred compensation plan can be a good fit and have a significant impact on lowering their tax bite. Our Penn Mutual Advanced Sales team can help you design a plan to fit your client's needs.
So, George, we're now roughly about 4 months out from the Connolly decision. We've talked about Connolly on this podcast before. I think everybody that we have on the show here today has probably taken roughly, 75,000 calls on Connolly since the decision actually came out. Is this a good time to be talking to business owners about Connolly? Not necessarily to scare them into, hey, you have to do planning, but just to review their buy-sell plan. Is the end of the year a great time to be doing that?
Absolutely. Review, review, review. What a great opportunity to get in front of your clients before another advisor does. Even though Connolly was ultimately an estate tax issue, it was the result of a redemption agreement. Our FPs and their clients are looking at sunset in 2026, as Amy previously mentioned. They're looking at an upcoming election and government debt at all-time highs. Most certainly, the government will seek to increase tax revenues. The Connolly case is a great opportunity to review your client's current situation and anticipate any future impact that Connolly may cause. Get the data, get a copy of the redemption agreement, an in-force ledger on any life insurance policy, any estate planning documents, and give your advanced sales team a call. We can help you strategize a plan for your clients.
So I was at a meeting last week where somebody brought up the idea of the Columbo close. Now, Jenna is often laughing at me at my dated pop culture references, but Jenna, just
not true.
Very true. Very true. So Jenna, there used to be a show on called Columbo, and it was this detective played by Peter Falk. And basically he would go around and he would pretend he was basically dumb, but he was not. And he would always catch the bad guy at the end. But one of his consistent tacks in regards to how he would question people is he would always come back kind of as he was ending the interview saying, "Oh, and one more thing. Oh, and one more thing." So I think a lot of salespeople call that the Columbo close. George, don't you think that when you're talking to these business owners about their buy-sell in regards to Connolly, it's a great time for the Columbo close where you could say, "Hey, one more thing. Let's talk about your executive retention strategy. Hey, one more thing. Let's talk about your personal financial planning. Hey, one more thing. Are you charitably inclined? How's your charitable planning looking? Hey, one more thing. How's your estate planning looking? Do you know that we have this tick to sunset coming up?" Isn't this just a great time to be getting in front of those business owner clients? And even if they don't have a Connolly problem, kind of re-looking at what they have and seeing maybe if we can improve some of the elements of their own personal financial or their business planning.
Sure. What better chance do we have of getting in front of people than something that the Supreme Court just came down with a decision on and said, "Hey, look, guys, there's something out here. You need to be concerned with it. We need to look at it. Maybe your other professionals haven't taken the time yet or haven't caught up to you. Do you mind if we take 5 minutes to just talk about it, review your documents, see where you are? Maybe I can help you with this or something else that pops up in our discussion."
So the person that presented the Columbo close, I told him flat out I was going to steal that. So thank you to that person if they're listening here today.
What else are we missing here when you're talking with business owners about year-end business planning? What have we not covered so far?
Sure. How about Section 199 Cap A? So for corporations, the tax deduction was dropped to 21%. But Section 199 Cap A was kind of that move by Congress to give pass-through entities the same type of taxation that C corporations had at the 21% level. So 199 Cap A is scheduled to be eliminated in 2026. There are income thresholds that must be met to qualify for this Section 199A deduction. Business owners can plan company expenses. They can allocate corporate bonus programs and evaluate income shifting on their own income to qualify for the remaining tax years that are in front of us. Perhaps charitable gifting has already been mentioned. Life insurance and annuities can help by reducing taxable income. You need to work with one of the qualified tax advisors in your area and your Penn Mutual Advanced Sales team to identify strategies that can make you a trusted advisor and also help your clients.
George, last question. So you are a worldly man, a world traveler, somebody that it's been literally everywhere. In fact, one of the first times I ever met you in person, you told me this crazy story about how when you were a teenager, you traveled behind the Iron Curtain and a whole bunch of interesting stuff. We'll leave that story for another day. But the question that I have for you is, let's say the travel gods came down and said, "All right, George, you could go on one last trip. You could go do one last vacation anywhere in the world. Where would it be and why?"
If you'd asked me that question last week, I would have said Japan, because evidently I love the food and it's a great place to visit, great culture.
So then if it's not Japan, what would it be?
What would it be if not Japan? Poland. And why? The food, culture.
All right, George, business planning, a great market, something that we're certainly supportive of in the advanced sales area here on the advanced sales team for Penn Mutual. Thanks so much for joining us, and looking forward to having you on in future episodes.
Thank you.
Well, we're in the fourth quarter, and the fourth quarter is giving season for a lot of people. I know that I'm in the fourth quarter making lots of trips to Goodwill, not just because I want the tax deduction at the end of the year, but because I think a lot of people think about charitable giving as we get closer to the holidays. So, Lindsay, we're going to talk to you a little bit about charitable planning here, but first, introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bill. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be on the wonderful Life Matters podcast. I feel like a celebrity on here. I'm Lindsay Cigler. I'm one of the directors on the advanced sales team. I've been with Penn for about a year now. Best year of my career. Love it. Especially working with my wonderful colleagues. I've been working in the advanced sales industry with life insurance carriers for several years now. And prior to that, I did work for an estate planning firm doing comprehensive estate planning for high net worth individuals.
All right. So we mentioned that you're going to be talking about charitable planning. why is it so important that people that want to give gifts to charities, but that want to qualify for a 2024 tax deduction, that they complete the gifts before the end of the year?
Well, it may seem silly, but they have to do it by the end of the year for them to be able to get that deduction on their 2024 tax return. So they do have to get those in by the end of the calendar year, even though they're not filing till sometime in 2025.
So if somebody wakes up on January 1st and they've got a bit of a New Year's hangover and they say, oh, I forgot to give that charitable gift to my favorite charity, it's too late at that point, correct? I mean, you to qualify for the 2024 tax year, it's got to be done before the end of the year, and it's got to be a completed gift. Do I have that correct?
That's correct, Bill. So I don't know if Goodwill is open on New Year's Eve, but if they have to run to Goodwill on New Year's Eve, that's what they have to do.
They are. Trust me on that.
Awesome. Hey, Lindsay, along those lines, we get a lot of questions about QCDs or qualified charitable distributions. Can you talk to us a little bit about, first of all, what those are and why those are a really cool income tax strategy for clients who are charitably inclined?
Yeah, so qualified charitable distribution is a really neat tool. Before I get into what it is, I think it's also important to define who it's appropriate for. So clients that are 70 and a half years old already have an IRA, and the key is charitably inclined or already giving to charity. So what a QCD is it's something that's going to allow someone with that IRA to make a donation to their charity using IRA funds. And it allows them to potentially, if they do the timing right, have it count towards their RMD, so their required minimum distribution, and it's excluded from their gross income. So they don't have to worry about, taking a deduction or having a percentage of AGI. So it's kind of neat because even though, because of Secure, some of the ages changed for RMDs, but most it's going to be 73. When they have to start taking RMDs, they can do a QCD starting at 70 and a half. So they can technically start taking it before they qualify for that RMD. So, but as long as the transfer was made after the actual date that taxpayer attains 70 and a half, so it can't be within that year, they have to actually already be 70 and a half. And the transfer is coming from the IRA, not another qualified plan, and directly from the IRA to the charity, and that charity is a public charity. It allows that transfer to count from their RMD. It's not going to be additional income for them. And so it's a really neat tool for those that are, like I said, already charitably inclined and don't want to have additional income from the RMDs that they would otherwise have to take.
It sounds like a very cool opportunity. And I love kind of the way you put that it sounds like the first thing is to identify the client, that this certainly isn't for everyone, but for the right client in the right age range with the right planning goals, this can make a lot of sense. And the second thing I heard you say is to keep an eye on the timing. I get this call sometimes, and I know kind of as we approach year end, that can be important to make sure, for example, that if you want the QCD to count towards your RMD, you have to do the QCD first. So the QCD has to be done earlier in the year than the RMD. So those are definitely conversations that I think are good to be having with clients, not just at year end, but as we go into the next year as well.
So Lindsay, last thing from a charitable perspective. So the Secure Act is now something that is pretty well settled. They just came out with some additional regulations associated with it, some additional guidance. But one of the things that it did was it made planning for IRA owners challenging from a wealth transfer perspective, because IRAs already weren't ideal assets to pass on to the next generation. One of the things that the Secure Act did was it basically took away the ability to do the stretch. We can no longer stretch the distributions over a beneficiary's lifetime. You have to take out the money over a 10-year period. One of the things that we have seen people do that are charitably inclined is to name a charitable remainder trust as the beneficiary of an IRA to, in essence, get kind of a end result that looks like the old stretch, but it's not the old stretch. How does that work, and what does that really mean for clients that intend to do something like that?
Yeah, you're right that Secure essentially eliminated stretch IRAs for most non-spousal beneficiaries. A lot of hedging language there. There are some exceptions, but for most non-spousal beneficiaries, as you said, they'd have to take it over those 10 years. A lot of times those individuals, the heir of the IRA, so to speak, is often in their working years, huge tax hit. So if you have a client that has a sizable IRA, they want to leave it to kids or grandkids, and they don't need that money for retirement, using a CRT can be a possibly good replacement, essentially, or an alternative for a CRT. And a CRT, as a little reminder, is a charitable remainder trust. So this is a charitable vehicle that allows a client to set up this trust and typically contribute an income producing asset. And there's going to be an income stream back, so an income beneficiary, and the remainder goes to charity, and they're able to get a deduction for that. So here, instead of contributing an income producing asset, they would instead name the IRA, or I guess name the CRT as the beneficiary of the IRA. So the IRA is essentially the asset that is going to the CRT. So the IRA would pay out to the CRT. This CRT, as I mentioned, has an income stream that's designed to pay. It could be a number of years or over a lifetime, depending how it's designed. And here, typically, that income beneficiary would be who would normally be the inherited IRA recipient or the beneficiary of that IRA. So the income beneficiary would typically be that child or grandchild. And as I mentioned, stretch it out over a lifetime or a number of years. Now, the distributions from the CRT are taxable to that beneficiary, but it's the same. It would also have been taxable if it was a stretch IRA, but here it now allows them to stretch it out and essentially function more like the original stretch IRA over a number of years that can be longer than 10 years. And so they can, not have that tax hit. As always, as we talked about, always be marketing or always be looking for opportunities. There's also potential life insurance opportunities here, potentially to replace that amount that is now going to charity. Because remember, the remainder after the income stream of that IRA is going to go to the charity. So maybe there's some life insurance to replace the amount going to charity, or even though there is going to be the tax is going to be spread out, there is going to be some tax. Maybe there is life insurance on the IRA owner. So at their death, the heirs get an amount that can go to help with those taxes when they do get the income stream from the CRT.
All right, last question for you. You're like you are what I refer to as a double diner. So explain to everybody what a double diner is.
First, you're going to have to explain double diner. What is this?
Of course. Explain what a double diner is, what that means, and how you were able to achieve your high level of success while being a double diner.
So a double diner, while I do like to eat, it's not referring to food in any way. So I actually went to Pepperdine University for both my undergrad and my law school degree. So I always joke that I went there for 7 years, but I didn't Van Wilder. I actually did get 2 degrees. So it'd be a very expensive Van Wilder experience. But Bill also went there for law school and his MBA. So I think, Bill, you're essentially a double diner as well, but you were more efficient with your time. I did in 7, you did in 5. So
4, actually.
Oh, 4.
Yeah.
That's right. 4. Who's counting?
Yeah,
right?
4. So yes, we're both double diners. For those of you that have never been to Pepperdine University or seen any pictures, it's like basically a Club Med on the shores of Malibu, California. So anybody that's able to get through 7 years of studying there and be as smart and successful as Lindsay has been, really has to have strong intestinal fortitude to want to study. So congratulations on that, Lindsay. And thanks so much for joining us here.
Thanks. It helped. The library has excellent views, so at least you can see those while studying.
Last, but certainly not least, in our tour around the advanced sales team is our friend, our loved one, Jay Perlman. Jay, thanks so much. Tell everybody who you are, what you do.
I'm Jay Perlman. I've been with advanced sales at Penn Mutual for 7 years. I was a life insurance wholesaler for many, many years before that. I've been in the industry a long, long time. I live outside of Philly near Bryn Mawr, work remote, as we all do, and enjoying that a lot. It's been a good ride.
Awesome. Now I get to kick this one off because I begged Bill to allow me to do it. So Jay, what most of our listeners may not know is that you are a long distance motorcycle rider. And I think that first of all makes you officially the coolest member of our team. Second, I am told that the movie Easy Rider is sort of the classic motorcycle film, and that this film also explores the themes of the American dream. So it got me thinking, I would love to hear when we're talking about retirement planning, how is retirement planning like a long distance motorcycle ride? Set it up for us, Jay.
Very, very similar, because with motorcycle trips, which I do often, I'm going away to West Virginia later this week. I know the value of good preparation for the expected or unexpected. Anything might come. But first off, I have to start with a goal. Where am I going? What am I going to do? How am I going to get there? What's it going to be like on the way? And for retirement, a client may ask, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? Where do I want to visit? And how can I afford things if I don't have a job? So on a bike ride, I might run into bad weather, detours, traffic, sometimes all at the same time. In retirement, a client may run into increased cost of living, lower returns on their investments, unexpected healthcare costs, and even travel delays. As if no one ever does that. Before a trip or retirement, preparation plans are needed. You got to think about it. So for retirement, how are savings, investments, retirement plans, and most important, things like insurance policies doing? Coordination and review of all the investments and income sources is really important for planning a future lifestyle. For a bike ride, I need gas. I have to stop and get gas to keep going. In retirement, fuel is the income. Planning for steady, reliable income, whether through pensions, annuities, distributions from savings, all that's key. You don't want to run out along the way. Maybe a good idea for clients to try out their retirement income before they actually leave their job, just to see how the budget and spending hold up with the new reality of retirement income. This way they can compare vision, their idea of what they want to do with their projections, and then the reality of what the monthly income is that they really have to spend. Now, Penn Mutual, we offer solutions for maintaining a steady income. We've got annuities, we've got life insurance products where you could use distributions either on a steady basis every year or an occasional situational need after a down year in the equity markets. So for me, I prepare for a long trip by packing up my bike with everything I need to take, just to see if it all fit on the bike, and then riding the bike, taking it out for a long ride just to see how it feels to be on the bike. So I do a lot of preparation and think about it. I don't want to get down the road and find I forgot something or I took too much and I've got to ship everything home by FedEx, which I've done. FedEx is your friend when you're on the road. So I really do all this preparation just to think about it. And I think it's important to do for clients. I mean, I wouldn't leave without knowing my GPS works, without having rain gear, heated clothing in case it gets cold. And for retirement, I wouldn't enter it without a plan and resources to draw on every day. Preparation, flexibility, having the right support along the way make all the difference between a smooth journey and one that's full of unnecessary risks and detours.
Love it. And sometimes you drive how many miles to get a hot dog?
Last week I went 175-mile round trip just to buy one hot dog.
Sometimes it's about the hot dog.
Sometimes it's about the hot dog. Sometimes it's about the ride.
Was it a good hot dog at least?
It was a great hot dog. Jimmy's Hot Dogs.
All right.
Sounds like a great place for an episode of Bites, Sites, and Life Insurance Insights, Bill.
We'll put it on the list. All right. So Jay, this is the year-end planning episode. There are a lot of people that between now and the end of the year are going to have to take RMDs from their IRA or their qualified plan, and they don't necessarily need them for retirement income. They just have to take it because that's how the law works. What are some suggestions for people that have to take those RMDs, but they just don't need it for retirement income?
Well, they could do a gift to the next generation. They could do charitable donations the way Lindsay just explained with QCDs. But if the big thing is that we work with, if they're still insurable, it might be make a lot of sense to reposition those assets into a life insurance policy. Take the distribution, pay your tax on the RMD, and then use that amount that's left over for premiums on life insurance that will move money tax-free to the next generation. It's a really efficient use of money for clients who have to take RMDs and don't have a use for them.
And if they're not insurable, you can maybe merge a couple of those ideas, make a gift to the next generation, and use that to buy life insurance on G2 for retirement income, protection, whatever it might be. That's another idea that we've seen utilized in the past. When that senior generation that takes the RMD isn't insurable, think about, hey, we can move that money to G2 or even potentially G3 in some circumstances.
And let's explain the Gs. I'm a G1, the elder generation. My kids are the G2s, and my grandson is now a G3. I walk around and call him G3, and nobody in my family knows what we're talking about. But he is G3.
I love that. Jay, as we wrap up our year-end planning ideas, I do want to cover just one last thing, and that is pension plans. So in the past, we would have thought of this time of year as pension plan season. Can you walk us through why that has changed and what you would recommend business owners think about in this space going forward?
I used to be active in this market and used to try to hustle, get everybody to write their plan before the end of the tax year, the calendar year, because the government had strict limits on when you can make a contribution to a qualified plan or even set it up. But with the Secure Act, business owners now have more time. Business owner can now set up the plan before their filing date, which including extensions. So that could run well into the next year, giving them time to look back and see what their income was, what their expenses were, what kind of money do they have to put into a qualified plan. So it's really a good idea to talk about qualified plans through the end of the year, but into the early parts of the next year to help business owners make a really good plan, efficient use of the money.
But this is a great time to be talking to those business owners and kind of teeing them up. So even though it's not a requirement that they have the plan in place before the end of this year, the reality is that a lot of business owners already kind of have an idea, hey, I'm going to get murdered on taxes next year. And so it's a great idea to start to talk to them about it now, with implementation maybe happening in the first quarter of next year.
Absolutely. It removes the urgency. They have to write it by the end of the year, but you could absolutely have those conversations and let them think about it and explore options and what they could do. It gives them time. But this is a good time to talk to them.
Jenna, I think we called that the tax instant replay. Is that correct?
That's correct. You got it.
Very good. All right, Jay, last question for you. So way back when I started, we had a meeting in Philadelphia. It was actually even before Jenna joined the company. That's how far back it was. But we went around the table at dinner and said, what's the first concert you ever went to? And you had the coolest answer I've ever heard for that particular question. Now, we've gone back and forth. You might think that, I think kind of going through the memory bank, you thought, well, maybe that wasn't the right answer, but we're going to stick with that answer. What was the answer that you gave? And what was your memories of that particular event?
Jim Morrison and the Doors with Light My Fire and all the great hits that the Doors had in the late 60s, because that's how old I am. It was a great concert. It was loud. It's before I ever started using earplugs at concerts, so I absorbed every note of all those guitars. It was great.
And Ray Manzarek playing the keyboard. Yeah.
Yep. I've seen Ray Manzarek too. After the Doors, I saw Ray Manzarek on tour. Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's still the coolest answer I've ever heard. I mean, I've heard lots of U2s or Pearl Jam or Metallica. I think Amy Bryant had another cool answer. She said Guns N' Roses. But the Doors was just so unique because how many people do you run into that have seen the Doors, much less have it be their first concert? So well done.
I told you, Bill, coolest member of our team.
Thank you.
All right, Jay, thanks so much for joining us on Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast.
Thanks. Glad to be part of it.
Well, Jenna, what a great conversation we had. Did you know we had such great team members?
I sure did. It was amazing. They're all amazing.
They're so good. I learned stuff. Mm-hmm. That's hard to do.
Not for me.
Lies. All right. Well, hey, if any of our listeners have questions for myself or for Jenna or Amy or George or Lindsay or Jay, they're welcome to give us an email. Email address is lifematters@pennmutual.com. Again, lifematters@pennmutual.com. That's a special mailbox that only I have access to, and I do respond to every email that is sent there. Again, that's lifematters@pennmutual.com. If you haven't subscribed to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever podcasting app that you use, in fact, it might be even YouTube that you use for podcasts going forward, please subscribe today. That way you don't miss any future episodes of the show. We also keep our past episodes on those podcasting apps, so please do so today. If you are a subscriber on Apple Podcasts and you haven't left us a review already, A, you've made Jenna exceptionally sad. And B, please do so today. It only takes a second. Leave us a 5-star review. Even better, if you could put a comment in there telling us how much we love the show. Having additional reviews, having additional content helps to boost visibility of the show. So please do so today. Jen and I will both be your best friends if you do. So with that, Jenna, any closing words for our audience here today?
You bet, Bill. As of the date of this podcast being published, we've been telling everyone exactly how many days we have until the sunset of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that Amy mentioned. As of today, it is 433. So clock's ticking. 433?
That seems like a lot. Is that a lot?
It depends on who you ask. But if you're asking the estate planning attorneys doing this work, it is certainly not. So keep an eye on the clock. Don't forget to get with your clients.
It's a blink of an eye for high-end estate planning attorneys. All right. So for Jenna Washatka, the entire advanced sales team, I'm Bill Bell. Thank you so much for joining us here today, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.